These 15 war movies made more money than most of us could ever imagine. There's tank battles, true stories, and Tom Cruise's plot to assassinate Hitler. Some of these movies won Oscars. Some historians hate, but everyone made a fortune. Can you guess which war film out-earned all the others? Lone Survivor made $154 million and did it by keeping the story tight and personal. The movie zeroes in on a 2005 mission in Afghanistan. 4 Navy SEALs sent to capture Taliban leader Ahmad Shah. The operation falls apart, 3 SEALs are killed, and only Marcus Luttrell makes it out alive. He survives thanks to a Pashtun villager who steps in, risking his own life out of loyalty to Pashtun Wali, the local honor code. The film doesn't get bogged down in the politics of the Afghanistan war. Instead, it sticks to the facts on the ground. 4 men, 1 failed mission, and what it takes just to get out alive. That focus is what makes it work. It's universal: survival, loyalty, brotherhood, regardless of the century or the war. The execution is solid. Strong direction, great action, and it landed Oscar nominations for sound mixing and sound editing. It picked up more awards for directing, writing, and makeup too. Not a groundbreaking war movie, but a reminder that sometimes sticking to a clear, personal story is all you need. Unbroken is the kind of stranger-than-fiction story that Hollywood loves, and the box office responded. $161 million in total. This is Louis Zamperini's story. Olympic runner, bomber pilot, he got shot down over the Pacific and survived 47 days at sea with 2 other crewmen. And then he got captured by the Japanese and tortured as a prisoner until the war finally ends. Nobody expected it to open huge. There was no big-name star, and it was director Angelina Jolie's project all the way. But the movie outperformed predictions, pulling in $10 million more than expected in the first week. Universal dropped it on Christmas Day 2014, which was a smart move. The movie leans heavily into themes of faith and endurance. Louis isn't religious at first, but his survival, both in the raft and in the camps, gets tied up in his conversion to Christianity. Faith-based movies traditionally play well at Christmas, and Unbroken fit right into that market. The box office bump had everything to do with timing, the real-life story, and how it was sold. No movie stars necessary, just an incredible true story and the right release strategy. Black Hawk Down is Ridley Scott's war movie about the 1993 U.S. military mission in Mogadishu, Somalia, where everything went sideways the second a Black Hawk helicopter got shot down. American troops suddenly found themselves trapped in hostile streets, fighting to survive while other soldiers scrambled through the city trying to reach them. When it was over, only a handful made it out alive. The rest were either killed in the fighting or taken prisoner, paraded through the city by militia loyalists. The movie made $172 million at the box office, and it's got all the trademarks of a well-made war film: tight direction, a cast packed with up-and-comers and soon-to-be stars, and relentless pacing. But what really pushed Black Hawk Down was the timing. It hit theaters in December 2001, just months after 9/11 and right in the early days of the War on Terror. Americans were divided and anxious. And here comes a movie where the American soldiers are shown as clear-cut good guys fighting impossible odds. For a lot of people, it was exactly what they needed to see at the time: a story about American bravery with no gray area, just survival and sacrifice. Hacksaw Ridge is the true story of Desmond Doss, the first conscientious objector in U.S. history to receive the Congressional Medal of Honor during World War II. Doss, a Seventh-day Adventist, refuses to carry a gun after a violent incident in his childhood, but he still volunteers for the Army. The film doesn't skip the tough parts. Doss takes a ton of harassment and abuse just for sticking to his beliefs and enlisting without a weapon. The Army sends him into the Battle of Okinawa as a medic, and it's there that he ends up rescuing 75 men left for dead on the battlefield. That's not a legend. They kept a running tally as he pulled men to safety one by one. Hacksaw Ridge pulled in $180 million at the box office and became another modern war film that doesn't sugarcoat anything. The combat is brutal and realistic, but what makes the movie work is how it handles its subject without taking sides or talking down to anyone. Religious viewers see their convictions honored in Doss's story. People who are anti-war or for gun control find something for themselves too. The movie walks a fine line and manages to connect with everyone, regardless of what they believe. That's rare. At number 11, we got Valkyrie, starring Tom Cruise. This is one of those World War II films that knows exactly how to play its cards. The story centers on General Klaus von Stauffenberg, a very real Nazi commander who decides to take action after seeing the disaster of Hitler's leadership in North Africa. Stauffenberg is inspired by a previous failed attempt to assassinate Hitler by General Henning von Tresckow, and that's where Operation Valkyrie comes in, the plan to kill Hitler and overthrow the Nazi regime. The coup fails, but the plot itself is the kind of thing everyone wants to see work, even knowing how it ends. The movie leans into the good German angle, a popular World War II trope for a reason. Schindler's List did it, and people respond to stories that remind them not everyone in Germany backed the Nazis, that some risked everything to stop them. Casting Tom Cruise in the lead only helps. The guy is a box office magnet with Legend from 1985 as his only real miss. Valkyrie brought in $201 million worldwide, proof that even with a well-known ending, a story about trying to kill Hitler is always going to sell. Fury came out swinging a few years later, showing World War II from the inside of a Sherman tank. The movie is set in the final days of the war and follows a tank crew pushing toward Berlin. The story is told through Norman, a typist drafted into combat and completely unprepared for what's ahead. He gets thrown into battle after battle, struggling to keep up until he finally earns the respect of the unit. It's not an Oscar darling. Fury didn't pull any Academy Award nominations, unlike some of the other big war movies, but it still landed right with audiences. There's a simple mission at the center, the crew fighting Nazi Germany, a goal that pretty much everyone can get behind. But it's not a throwback, flag-waving kind of movie. David Ayer directs it with grit, showing just how ugly and brutal tank warfare actually was, something modern films haven't really done before. Fury went on to make $212 million at the box office, a solid showing for a movie that's more about realism than Hollywood gloss. At number 9, we got the only Revolutionary War movie in this list, and it doesn't bother with the Founding Fathers. It's all about the foot soldiers, and more specifically, Mel Gibson's Benjamin Martin, a farmer and veteran who's done with war until the British kill his son. What follows is pure bloody revenge. Martin leads a guerrilla campaign, becomes a folk hero, and turns the fight into something personal. It's basically a Charles Bronson movie with tricorn hats and cannons. This is pre-scandal Mel Gibson, back when he could still pack a theater. Heath Ledger brings real weight as Martin's oldest son, and Jason Isaacs goes all in as the kind of villain who makes you want to cheer for every bit of payback. There's nothing subtle about the way The Patriot retells the American Revolution. It's about as morally black and white as Hollywood gets, and audiences ate it up. American myth-making always plays well, and this time was no different. $215 million at the box office. For a Revolutionary War movie, that's a huge win. On the other side, you've got Inglourious Basterds, Tarantino's take on World War II. Instead of slow, somber war drama, this is a revenge fantasy with style. Brad Pitt plays a renegade American lieutenant putting together a black ops unit made up of Jewish American soldiers. Their job is kill Nazis, scalp Nazis, and terrorize the Third Reich. The endgame is to assassinate Hitler himself. By 2009, Tarantino already proved he could bring in a crowd, and here he just lets loose. The movie doesn't ask for deep reflection or guilt, it wants the audience to have fun. And nobody steals the show like Christoph Waltz as Hans Landa. The performance won him an Oscar, and for good reason. The script could have turned the Nazis into generic bad guys, but instead, Landa is the most fascinating character in the movie. You can't root for him, but you can't look away either. Inglourious Basterds pulled in $321 million worldwide. For a revisionist war movie that spends as much time on dialogue as it does on action, that's a massive hit. The film follows Oskar Schindler, a Polish businessman in Nazi-occupied Krakow, who uses his factory as a cover to save Jewish workers from the death camps. What starts out as a business move, cheap labor, turns into something much bigger, as Schindler witnesses what the Nazis are really doing. By the end, he's putting everything on the line to save as many people as he can, and he pays for it with his fortune, his marriage, and almost his life. Every part of this film is handled by the best. Steven Spielberg directs, John Williams composes the score, and Liam Neeson leads with a performance that holds the whole thing together. There's also a story behind how it all came to the screen. Poldek Pfefferberg, one of the people Schindler saved, promised him back in 1947 that he'd make sure the world knew what Schindler did. Pfefferberg spent decades pushing to get Schindler's story told. It took time, but it landed in the hands of Spielberg, who was the right person to do it justice. Schindler's List brought in $332 million at the box office. The story deserved to be told, and it finally got told by the best in the business. If you want to see a film that makes the audience feel the tension of war in real time, it's 1917. Set during World War I, the story follows two British soldiers, Blake and Schofield, sent on an impossible mission. Cross no man's land to deliver a message that will save 1,600 men from walking straight into a German trap. The magic here comes from how director Sam Mendes and cinematographer Roger Deakins chose to film it. 1917 is shot to look like one continuous take. What that does is put you right in the mud with the characters. The clock's always ticking, the urgency never lets up, and there's no relief. The film unfolds almost in real time, so you feel every second of the race against death. The approach paid off. 1917 grossed $384 million worldwide. Pearl Harbor is a perfect example of a film where accuracy doesn't matter and nobody at the studio cared what historians thought. This is Michael Bay's take on the infamous Japanese attack that pulled the U.S. into World War II, told mainly through the story of two American combat pilots. Most historians hate this movie for how it plays with the facts, but that didn't stop people from buying tickets. Pearl Harbor pulled in $450 million worldwide. The formula is simple. The first half follows these young Americans through romance and training, and the second half is pure Michael Bay, with explosions every couple of minutes as the attack unfolds. This isn't the kind of war film that asks the audience to question anything or confront any uncomfortable truths. It's a big revenge story, with America as the victim, and just to make sure everyone goes home happy, the script squeezes in a whole sequence about the Doolittle raid for payback. It's a movie that was built to fill theaters. For the studio, it worked. Saving Private Ryan couldn't be more different in tone or approach, but still ended up a box office giant. $482 million worldwide. Spielberg and Tom Hanks teaming up always gets attention, but it's what's on the screen that really set this movie apart. The story starts at D-Day, with Captain John Miller and his squad barely surviving one of the most intense opening scenes in movie history. The mission is to go behind enemy lines, find Private James Ryan, and bring him home because his three brothers have already died in combat. It's as much about the cost of war as it is about heroism, and most of the squad doesn't make it back. The Academy gave it 5 Oscars, and it's no accident that after Saving Private Ryan, a whole new wave of World War II movies and TV started showing up everywhere. Dunkirk is one of those rare war movies that not only brings in real money, but also lands with critics and audiences at the same time. Christopher Nolan came in with a reputation, Dark Knight trilogy, Inception, all the big stuff, and with Dunkirk he switched gears. Instead of superhero escapism, he took on one of the most desperate moments of World War II, the Battle of Dunkirk, where Allied forces were trapped and nearly wiped out. The movie doesn't focus on one big hero or a tidy victory. Nolan tells the story from the ground, the air, and the sea. There's British and French soldiers, pilots, civilians, everyone just trying to survive and get each other out. There's no Hollywood payoff. The main characters don't win the day. They just make it home. That's the emotional weight of the whole film. Instead of some clean, cathartic win, you get a sense of how close everything came to disaster and why just surviving counted as victory. Even with that tone, Dunkirk landed as a hit. It pulled in $530 million worldwide, opening in the top 3 highest-grossing war movies of all time. That's not just big numbers for the genre, it's huge for any movie that isn't a sequel or a superhero. American Sniper is the kind of box office run most studios dream about. The film, loosely based on Navy SEAL Chris Kyle's 2012 memoir, put Bradley Cooper front and center as the marksman sent into Iraq in the years after the U.S. invasion. It doesn't shy away from the details, the firefights, the tension, and the real damage done at home. You see the war, but you also see Kyle's marriage and how combat changes everything, even when he's back home. What made American Sniper different is the timing. This wasn't a look back at World War II where everyone's got distance and a simple narrative. The Iraq War is still fresh, still controversial, and people brought a lot of feelings to the theater. But the film sidestepped taking any hard political stance. It focused on what combat did to the people who served, not the politicians who sent them. It's a movie that's pro-troops, if not exactly pro-war or anti-war. Bradley Cooper's performance is a big reason the movie worked. This was the role that put him in the Oscar conversation for real. American Sniper ended up pulling in $548 million at the global box office. Oppenheimer raised the bar for what a war movie can be. Christopher Nolan already had a record as the guy behind Dunkirk, but with Oppenheimer, he became the only director to have 2 of the highest-grossing war films of all time. The movie is based on the book American Prometheus by Kai Bird and Martin J. Sherwin. It tells the story of J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb. From his early work as a physicist to running the Manhattan Project, and then to being targeted in the communist witch hunts after the war. The film doesn't let anybody off the hook. It's part biopic, part courtroom drama, part war movie, and it forces the audience to actually sit with the moral fallout of building and using the atomic bomb. That's the real trick here. Oppenheimer isn't comfortable, and it's not supposed to be. It makes you deal with the reality that behind every headline or history lesson there are people making impossible choices, and sometimes those choices haunt them for the rest of their lives. That combination, Nolan's direction, Cillian Murphy's performance, and the sheer gravity of the story brought in $957 million at the global box office.